We want to start off with a reminder that we are not doctors. Before you make any changes or try something new, always consult with your doctor and medical team first. Chronic illness can vary from patient to patient, so it's always best to consult with your own doctor for what is best for you.
Hello, welcome to I Be Determined. I'm your host, Mason Harvey, and I have Crohn's disease, and I speak from the role of a patient.
And I'm your host, Michelle Harvey. I am Mason's mom and speak as the role of a caregiver. Today's episode is a continuation from last week's exciting episode 504 plans. So, which are extremely important. And I hope to some of you it was exciting and new information, or at least
learn from it.
Yeah, something you can learn from, or it's helpful if you have one and you're like, oh, that makes sense. And this is why. And, make sure your school is being compliant and actually working with you. So today's episode is going to be about what to include in that 504 plan. Maybe there's going to be some things in here that you'll go, oh, you know what? I should put that in. Yeah, I should include that too. Right. Yeah. So these aren't the only things, like we're not saying like, this is what you need to have. Yeah. It's like, these might be extra things in addition to what your child
just needs. Ideas.
So it's important for you to know what's unique to your own child, your own teen. And hopefully these will help maybe with a few things maybe you didn't think of. So if you are watching us right now and you're like, I don't know what they're talking about, we're going to put a link up here at the top of the screen, and it'll show you last week's episode to find out what 504 plans are and the steps to take to get it into place.
And understand them so it makes more sense in this episode.
And to know what to do if you are not being supported by the school. And we also include a link to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation and IBD Help Center that can help you guys with questions about 504 plans, among other things they can help you with. And so the reason this is so important is because just because you have IBD, like, you want to get the same education as other kids do, right?
Just because I have Crohn's disease shouldn't mean I'm not as educated as someone else who does not have Crohn's disease and doesn't have any disease.
Right. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your education because
for something you can't control.
Right. It isn't fair. And so a 504 plan is just something that is ensuring that the needs of your child or teen are met while also being able to complete their lessons. So you have to think like, you guys are pretty amazing because you not only have to deal with what people don't see is how much time. This is why we post so much on our Instagram page at Team I Be Determined and on Facebook, because I want people to see how much work this disease entails
it takes.
Yeah, what it takes. And then in addition, it's like, oh, just be a normal kid and go to school, and you still have to, you're responsible for getting your work done. It's important to
You can't be like, oh, I have Crohn's and I'm in a flare today. I don't feel like going to school.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
So it's like, you might miss school, you might miss certain activities because of it.
Catch up work that you have to pile on 1 or 2 days, depending on how many days you have off. A week.
And so where other kids may have a day off, you guys have a day of work on their day off. So you're still responsible for completing your assignments. And this disease does not excuse you from that. There's a lot of up and downs with IBD. You never know where you're going to be in it. Some days you're doing really well, sometimes it turns and it's not. So that's difficult enough for kids, like, to never know, like, am I going to be well for this, or am I going to, what's it going to be like? So when you throw in missing classes and not feeling well, and you're not able to go to class because you're not feeling well, it can really affect how your academic performance goes. So it's very important to make sure we have something in place, like a 504 plan, to make sure that it's ready for your child when they need it. Not
because this doesn't affect your health. It affects everything that affects you.
It does. It's all part of it. And so you had asked a question last week, Mason, about PE, right?
Yes,
and I
did.
said I would answer that for you this week. So yeah. So a question might be, are they required to take PE, basically? And so the answer, and this is all according to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation's website, because this is where we went to get the information for the 504 plans and everything you're hearing today. So
get it from a reliable website.
Yes. So if you hear this and you miss something, head over to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation with the links we're providing, and you'll be able to find the same thing we're talking about. So children with IBD are not automatically excluded from physical education. So you're not going to just be automatically excused from PE
But
because
maybe
you
just
have it.
like not as challenging regimens
So
for
that's
PE.
well, and that's why, because normally if a kid is just like, I don't want to run the mile like they're all doing,
Yeah.
your teacher's not gonna be like, oh, sure, sure, bud, you go ahead and go sit out.
Yeah.
I'll still give you an 8. But the rest of you all have to earn this and do this. So there has to be something in place. And so PE accommodations should be written into a 504 plan so that if you do have to sit out, they do understand that it's because of the IBD. And if you're feeling well and you're able to participate,
Don't sit
don't,
out. Yeah.
yeah, you don't have to sit
Don't
out.
abuse your 504 plan.
Right. But yes, so the answer is you are still required to complete PE, but to the extent that you can. And that depends on your child and depends on their what you put into your 504
And
plan.
depends what state they're in.
Yeah. And also, if your child needs to stay home for an extended period of time, so like say you go into a flare and you know it's going to be a rough couple weeks, right?
Yeah.
Like until
And
you
then
maybe
you're
get
gonna have
under
trouble
control.
getting back out of it.
Right. And hopefully it's just a couple weeks.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. But it can vary. So you may have access to home tutoring for your child. So each school district, they may have different guidelines because you're allowed a certain amount of absences. And if you have enough consecutive absences per week, it may entitle them to receive home tutoring from the school district. That's just an option for you to also know that is available to you. So what we've done for you today, we've put together some examples of requests that are recommended by the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation for kids with IBD in a 504 plan. So
like recommendations for a 504 plan.
right, like make sure like, hey, this might be a good thing to add. And you can change or add whatever works for you, but we're hoping that some of these might be helpful. Let's jump into it and list some examples for you guys of things I should include in a 504 plan. So, one of the first things is something called stop the clock testing.
I really like the sound of that.
I know. I think this would be perfect for you.
I do not
Probably
like
for a
time
lot of
things.
kids. Yeah, I know you never have. So, but what this means is so the clock would stop during like a test or an exam if the student has to go to the bathroom. So, it will start again when the student returns. So that way you're not penalized if you're in that bathroom for 15 minutes or you get to come back and you still get to have that 15 minutes for the test. Because in class, tests are timed. You only have a certain amount of time to complete them. And you don't want to fail it because you had to go to the bathroom.
30 minutes.
So that's something you might want to consider putting in there. Another thing is excuses for absences and lateness due to appointments or not feeling well. And so these would be like excused absences that are related to your IBD care, which could include appointments and hospitalizations.
Which when you do go to the hospital, they do ask like, do you need a school
Yeah, they always ask it like a school
note so
right.
they know why you're not there.
Right. And so a lot of times if you ask when you're at the appointments, if they know at this point since they don't ask us because they know Mason's homeschooled.
Yeah.
But sometimes they forget and they'll still ask. Well, in the fusion center a lot. They'll ask because they're used to providing those. So that's the kind of thing because like you have a lot of appointments.
Yes, like every month, more than every month.
Yeah, you have about 2 a month.
Yeah, 2 a month.
Sometimes 3, sometimes 4, sometimes more. So the next one is allowing makeup work and take home exams if the student is hospitalized because of their IBD or if they're too ill to attend school. So what that means is that like say if you are hospitalized, that makes sense that you're going to have to make up the work and be able to take home the exams and do them. But sometimes you're just too ill to attend school. And so you would need to make sure you make up the work. So you want to make sure you include something like that in the 504 plan because more than likely, even if they're not hospitalized, there's going to be points where they're just too sick or not feeling well enough to go to school. So very important to include that. And also what I just mentioned, providing an at-home tutor if the student has to be out of school for a longer stretch of time.
Like when I was in the hospital for 2 months.
Yeah.
I'd probably need a tutor.
Right.
That is if they let them in the room.
Yeah, I know at the time they were like, sorry.
Like, sorry, it turns
Mason,
out
you
you
would have
can't
been like,
learn.
well, oh well, too
Yeah, too
bad.
good, too good. I mean, too
Yeah.
bad.
But there is that option if it's going to be a longer stretch of time. And so you want to make sure you have that in there because you may think you won't need it. But again, this is unpredictable. And you know what you hope and what actually happens sometimes
Doesn't
isn't the
happen.
same thing. Yeah.
One day it can be in a
So
flare. Well, one day can be fine, and the next day
mhm.
in a flare. We always say that Crohn's disease is like a roller coaster, and you
And
don't.
it is.
But it's a roller coaster where you don't know what's coming. You can't see what's coming.
Right. You
Just
just
take
have
flight.
no idea what's coming. It's
Yeah.
not like you can prepare for it. So the other thing is another one to include is food and beverage accommodations. So make sure there's access to water and snacks
Mhm.
to manage symptoms and maintain energy levels.
They say the school
So,
cafeteria. What happens if the school cafeteria doesn't have like certain, like I guess, types of food
mhm,
for Crohn's disease? Like, say, you know how they have certain diets and they're not allowed
right,
to have certain things.
right.
Would the kid just bring their own lunch to school
More
at
than
that point?
likely, because it's probably going to be hard for the school to
Yeah,
accommodate
okay. That's
that.
what
They may have something, I mean, they may have certain options, but there may be cross-contamination that takes place. I'm not entirely
I mean,
sure.
you might be thinking like that's kind of messed up that schools don't serve lunches to these
Mhm.
kids, but I mean that's a lot of work to
Right.
make like
And
custom
because
food in an area that isn't getting contaminated with the other things. That's a lot of work to do that.
it is,
And I
it would
know.
almost be impossible. I know. Yeah, like
Yeah.
we do here,
Like
but
yeah.
it's because everyone's triggers are different with this disease. So it's not like everybody just has to be gluten free.
And they're saying, "Oh, well, let's just eliminate gluten from everything."
Right. It's like some people are totally fine with gluten. And so it's just you have your own triggers. And so that's why it's important for parents to make sure they provide their child with what they need then.
Mhm.
So that way, if it's not available at the cafeteria, they are bringing something that will not make them sick or cause issues. And also sometimes it's beyond water, it's also supplemental drinks. Sometimes some of these kids are not even on a diet where they eat food. They are on a liquid diet. And so some are just doing like supplemental drinks. And so it's very important to have access to that too.
And what about the those lines? Like they're not drinks, but they're like the
Like the
line
NG
that G
tubes.
tube, yeah.
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 And so you have to, yeah. And so that would be on there too. That would be another accommodation you make because that's a special care, a different way to eat and make sure you're getting what you need. And so depending how your child, what they eat, what they need to drink, important to include those and just make sure they have extra access to water because a lot of times these guys get dehydrated.
Yeah.
So it's important to, I mean, everybody, it's important, everybody does,
Yeah, everyone
but
has to drink
especially
water.
for them. So, yeah. And then another one to include is allowing breaks throughout the day. You may need more breaks than somebody else. And again, I think it's important to point out these may not need to be used all the time. So you might be thinking that your child right now doesn't need any breaks because they're doing okay, but maybe in the future they will. So your child doesn't have to do these things if they're feeling okay and they're not needing those breaks. They don't even have to, but it's important to still include it. That's why we're telling you this.
Important things
And
include if you don't need it right
mhm,
now, because you might need it in
right.
the future.
And that's why we're doing this because you might be just thinking about your symptoms right now and not realizing
What
that
Crohn's has in
has,
store for you.
yeah, exactly. So these are kind of things like just include it. Even if you think right now they're not going to need it, just include it. If they don't, awesome. Then you don't
There's no
utilize
point
it.
in not including it, so I might as well just
Right.
do it.
And the other thing here we have listed is the PE adjustments, which we kind of talked about earlier. And that's where you make the accommodations for PE and whatever they may need. And so it's important for you to know exactly what your child may need and talk to the doctor about it too. And another thing is the seating considerations in the classroom. So preferential
Oh, so
seating.
like if you because how I'm immunocompromised.
Oh yeah, that wasn't actually what I was going to talk about.
Oh,
But no,
okay.
but that makes no, but that's it's a good point to bring up
Oh yeah,
because
I see.
yeah, so I was going to mention preferential seating to provide proximity to be near restrooms so you can get to the restroom
If you need to
quickly.
quickly, yeah.
Right. So maybe near a door so you can go to the bathroom. But what
So
you're
what I was
talking
gonna bring
about
up
is
was,
important
yeah,
too.
because how I'm immunocompromised and with all the sick illnesses going around, maybe sit a bit farther than the other students, sit away from each other, maybe like the back corner, the front corner, or something like that. So
Right.
you're
So
not
these are like right
surrounded.
in the center
Yeah.
of everything, maybe
So
on an
you're only covered by
outside
two
seat.
sides.
Right.
But you're on a corner, so you're
Right.
open to 2
And
sides.
some of you listening may not realize your child is immunosuppressed and
Mhm.
that may be something to consider. You might not be thinking about it because they're not on a biologic right now. Maybe they are getting a different treatment. But if you move to biologics or two, like he's on, they tend to suppress the immune system. So that
Because
may be something you want to put
yeah,
in there in case they switch medications throughout the year too.
because Crohn's disease itself, I wasn't really immunocompromised with Crohn's disease.
Well, your immune system's just
Yeah, it's
gone
attacking
crazy.
itself.
Mhm.
Basically, it's attacking you instead of attacking foreign invaders such as the flu, a cold, things like that. So they on the treatments, they have to put you on treatments that actually either eliminate the white blood cells, which isn't good because you can
That's
get
when
more sick.
for like with you mean like with Entyvio, I
Antibio,
believe
yes.
it's those the cells that are entering the gut, those ones.
It's destroying your immune system, but it is making it so Crohn's disease doesn't destroy you.
Right. So it's important to know what your child is on and talk to the doctor about this to see if that's something you even need. You might
Actually,
not.
because of this, this is a perfect time. We should say that you could go check out that video we have about different
Oh,
treat
like our
if someone
all the
our
different what
biologic
biologics
episode.
are. Yeah, our
Yeah,
biologic episode. Yeah, we can put a link up there so you guys can watch that if
and
you're
understand
going,
how each one works.
what is that? Because
Yeah.
maybe if you're looking at 504 plan, you might be new to all of this. So yeah, we have an episode on that too.
Hey.
Let's move along here for you guys. The next one is unlimited bathroom access to accommodate urgent needs. So that'd be giving your student an open or unrestricted bathroom pass to use as frequently as they need. So this is important for the teacher to
Yes.
understand, right? That
If I was in a flare in 2020 or 2021 or something like that, I would go at least 15 times a day, and then that's not including night, which I go probably like 4 times at night. And so when you're at school and they say, well, you can only go once during a class,
Mhm.
that or one during the day or anything. I don't know how many times they really
Right,
allow it,
right.
but
Just I mean, they probably
yeah.
think reasonably like one time a day might be needed
But
for
when you have
somebody.
when you're in a flare and you have Crohn's disease, you can't just do
Right.
one time a day.
And so a teacher may think a kid's just being problematic, like, I have to go again, like they're trying to get out of class.
Mhm.
And so it's like, no, these kids do need to go and they need to go quickly. So it's important to make sure that there's no restrictions on how much they can use a bathroom. And with that note, it's also important to maybe add something about permission for them to use a private bathroom, like one in a nurse's office. I mean, granted, if you're in a rush, you guys are going to run to whatever is
Yeah,
closest
the
to you.
nearest bathroom.
But sometimes you're going to be in there a while, or maybe there's other needs you have. And so you might want more privacy and be able to take up a space for half an hour. And so that might be something like talk to your, like, see if the school nurse has one, or maybe there's an employee area that they can allow you to use. But make sure you put permission there to use other bathrooms beyond just the student bathrooms, and I would include that in there. I think that's a good one. You probably
Mhm.
feel better about that, right?
I think so.
And then another thing is medication administration and with
Mm.
proper documentation. So you need that. And that's to make sure you get your medications on time.
So maybe, like, if you don't have to go to the hospital to get because it's not an IV, maybe it's just an injection, so you have to take it daily or something. So
Yeah.
maybe instead of
There's
uh,
biologics, there's new ones that are just certain things are just a pill, like you're
yeah,
saying.
or
Or
a
like,
pill.
yeah.
But, like, if it is an injection, you can have the nurse give it to you maybe, I guess,
Hmm.
something like that, because if you're at school, your parents can't really give it to you.
Right. You want to make sure that the school nurse has access to those medications and a plan for it.
And
Because you
savings.
know how you used to take, there's different medications you take every day. If you were at school,
Yes,
you'd
like
have to keep,
pills,
yeah,
yeah.
you'd have to keep taking
I take,
those.
like, a ton in the morning,
Yeah.
a few during the day, and then at night I take some. But, you have to know what track you're supposed to be on for your medications.
Right. And so that's an important thing to include in the 504 plan to make sure there's that specific ability to be able to have access to medication and to have a plan for those medications with the school nurse. So you want to make sure you include that. Even if like since Mason is no longer taking certain things during the day like that, I would still include that because if he goes into a flare and he needs
And
to
I
do
don't need those
have like a
things.
steroid
Yeah.
or something
It's
and
always good just to have it
right.
just in case
Right, exactly. And another good piece of advice is to allow a student to keep an extra set of clothing with the school nurse.
for reasons.
Yeah. just in
Yeah.
case. So it's nice, and I think that gives you peace of mind because at least you can go in there, change, and you can get back to whatever, to
Whatever
school.
fun subject you're learning,
Yeah,
it's important to address.
right, because I think most of us have a backpack in the car where we always have a change of clothes.
Mhm.
We are always prepared, and so think of it the same way. If you're gonna keep that with you, guys have one at school too, and you don't have to carry it with you every day,
Yeah.
but you can keep it with the school nurse, so nobody has to know about it. And then another thing they have is access to a school counselor for stress or anxiety related to symptoms. We have a therapist for
Mhm.
Mason for
A
these
very good one.
purposes. She's excellent. But if you don't have therapy in place, you don't have somebody, and even if you do, it's good to have a school counselor to be aware of this just in case the child does need it. And one of the other things is we kind of already mentioned being allowed to make up tests and homework, but also just make sure that there's extra time for assignments to maybe be completed, because maybe they won't need to do makeup work. Maybe they showed up to school, but maybe after school they have an infusion that day. So maybe they're not, if there's homework that has been assigned, they're going to need extra time to complete
Yeah.
that. So extra time for assignments, extra time for tests, those kind of things are just important to include. And something else we are going to talk about is the
Do's and don'ts of creating a 504 plan.
right. So these are things that you should do and things you don't want to do. So hopefully we'll help you guys avoid some errors here with these. So the first one is do include your child in identifying accommodations that may help them succeed in school. So I think that's kind of what we mentioned last week. It's important to talk to you, right? Like
Yeah.
I need to ask you,
Make sure your child's aware of what is in the 504 plan
right?
and what they need in it.
It's important to ask you that
Mhm.
because we might assume like we know, but we may not. You might be like, oh, well, I could really use this. So don't
Mhm.
be afraid to speak up. Number one, if you're a kid or a teen, speak up, let your parents know. Don't be embarrassed. Don't
Don't
be
hide
like,
it.
or don't feel like I'm being a pain. Like this is difficult. It's
You're
not
not
at
being a
all.
pain. You have Crohn's disease,
Right.
and Crohn's disease is being the pain.
Right.
You aren't doing anything.
Right.
You need
You
the
need that
speak up. Yeah,
right.
you
You
need to
need the
speak up. You need the
support.
support.
Your parent is your ally, and or your medical team is an ally too. So just make sure that you are being honest about what you need. It's never a
Speaking
problem.
up and being honest, you're not doing anything wrong.
No, it's never too much to ask.
Yeah.
And it helps parents because it's like, oh, okay, we'll make sure to include this. Maybe we didn't, maybe we didn't think about that. So the don't now, because we did a do, we'll talk about a don't, is don't assume your child is aware of or using the accommodations available to them. So if I don't communicate with you
Yeah.
within
If
the
you're like,
504
oh, I give you
plan,
a 504 plan, I'm like, what's
okay,
that?
right.
What's in it? What?
So if I don't go over with you, are you going to know to ask, like, if the teacher says you can't use the bathroom again, will you know that you're
I have a
supposed
504
to?
plan. You're supposed
Right.
to know you say
And
that.
so you might be like, okay, because
Okay, what's that?
you don't know. So it's important to make sure that your child is aware of what's in it so that they know what's available to them. Because how else are you going to know? What if you're not getting extra time to take a test?
Mhm.
And it's important to never assume that your child is going to be aware of the accommodations.
And
You
know
make sure they
everything
know.
in the 504 plan
Right.
that you set up.
And they may forget things, so it's important to go over it periodically
Like maybe
with them.
every 2 weeks or every month.
Depending on the kid, yeah. And so yeah, so just an important thing to remember. Another do is be specific about what accommodations are needed instead of saying as needed.
Leave it short and sweet
Yep, you don't have to say
and
as
strict.
needed. A don't is don't assume that the school is implementing your child's 504 plan. So what that means is kind of like we said, don't assume that they are actually doing what they're supposed to in the 504 plan. They may get it, maybe hopefully they read it, hopefully the teacher is aware of it, but maybe there is something they're not aware of. So don't assume that just because you have this 504 plan, you can walk away now and it's done. Like they're taking care of it.
Mm.
And so you want to make sure that, and that's checking in with your child, checking in with the teacher. You want to make sure that the school is doing what is in the 504 plan. Simple as that. Another do is include why, what, where, when, who, and how accommodations will be implemented. So,
More specific
Right.
about what it's all for and why they need it and
Right.
when they need it, who they're for, where they need it.
Yep. All those things. So include all the why, what, where, when, who, and hows.
So the teachers know how everything works.
Mhm. And don't assume every teacher, substitute, coach, staff, or administrator knows what your child's accommodation needs.
Because if you're a substitute, you might be filling in for the teacher. Because the
Right.
teacher might be sick for a day, so you're filling in.
Yeah.
And you don't. You're there for one day. You don't
Even if
know.
the child, like, even if you walked up and said, "Hey, I have Crohn's disease," she might be like, "Oh, okay." Like, they're
Yeah.
not going to
So say
know.
I have a 504 plan.
It's important to have a plan in place because if I was to drop my child off at school and I didn't know there's going to be a substitute that day, it's important that your child knows what to do and what to say. So maybe have a plan and what you
What to
would
do
tell.
in that emergency situation of substitute
Yeah,
teacher.
because they may not, they may know that your child, maybe they'll find out that your child has IBD. Maybe your child doesn't want to share
Mhm.
that information, but at least if you have the 504 plan, you can know that your child's accommodations will be met if they're aware of it. But just knowing that just because it's a teacher or a coach or, someone on staff, they're not going to know necessarily about what
Mhm.
your child needs. So don't assume that.
No.
Do develop a plan, even if your child is healthy and doing well at the beginning of the school year. Very important, like an insurance policy. You don't want to try to figure this out once your child is sick because then you're already trying to deal with that, and it's going to be much harder to do this process. So even if they are healthy, which is perfect
Yes.
timing to do it still, really, it's perfect timing because then you can put your attention on it, get everything you want in there, but make sure you still have that plan and try to, if you can, make sure it's at the beginning of the school year, unless, something changes throughout the year. Then you make those changes.
Yes. Make the
Um,
change as fast as possible.
this is an interesting one.
Oh,
Don't let your child talk you out of implementing a plan because they are too embarrassed or doing well at the beginning of the school year. So, like, some kids might think, I don't want others to know about this. I want to be like everybody else. I don't need a special plan. Like, even if your child says that's like, okay, talk with them, find out what the source of this embarrassment or shame or fear, whatever it is about the 504 plan, have open conversations about it, but make sure they understand that you're going to have it in place.
and it's there to help.
Yeah, you don't have to talk about it like that. You don't have
Yeah.
to go to your
Just
friends and
tell.
say, "I have a
Yeah.
504
Yeah.
plan."
Walk up to your friends and be like, I have a 504 plan.
Right.
No, just tell it to the teachers, just tell it to like the principal, just tell it to the council. You don't need to tell it to everyone in the school.
Right. And so you can assure your child that this plan is necessary. It's important for kids to learn when to start taking control of their disease. And this is part of managing it. Having a 504 plan is part of managing this disease. So it's really important to make sure your child understands that.
Letting them embrace their future selves.
Yep, get used to it.
Yeah. Get
Get
used to it.
because in the future you'll be advocating for yourself, so you need to start using that voice. But just because your child is like, I'm embarrassed, I don't want one, too bad. Like, this is going to be necessary, but make sure you do validate them and make sure that their concerns are addressed. You want to definitely make sure you do that and make them feel comfortable with
Yes.
it.
Yes.
And maybe they'll, once they understand what it's about, I think,
Don't overlook any concerns.
right, make sure you're addressing all of them and, just validate them, make sure they're understood.
Yes.
And do continually check in with your child teachers to see if the plan is working, right? So
Mhm.
maybe you have a 504 plan in place. You thought you got everything covered, but make sure you talk with your child, talk with the teachers to make sure everything is working as it's
Definitely.
supposed to.
Yes.
Yeah, like maybe something might need to be adjusted. Maybe something wasn't put in there that needs to be in there. Maybe something that was put in there is just not working out. So important to check in and make sure you keep the situation one where you can adjust it and be open to change. And also just know if it's working well. It's important to know if it's working well too. It's like awesome if it is. So yeah, keep checking in with your child and their teachers. And the last don't is don't get frustrated with the situation. So it's
Keep calm.
right.
Don't stress. Don't make anyone else stressed.
Right. Establishing, like it says, establishing accommodations can be a slow moving process. Keep on going, get the plan taken care of, and that way you guys will have that peace of mind. So just keep up with it. And the last thing we're talk about is I don't know if everyone's doing this, but I know this is very popular with COVID. So and at Mason School actually they do have options where you learn remotely. So there are different ways that they teach. They have classes that are online line. So, what if your child is learning remotely? Do you still need a 504 plan? Well, the answer is yes,
Yes.
you still do. So, maybe though, if you have a remote learner, something you'd want to include in the 504 plan is having permission to turn off or stay off camera if they're not feeling well. So maybe it's like you're laying down, you are,
Maybe you're just listening, you're trying to understand it, but
right,
you don't really wanna be on camera, you're just resting while,
right.
uh
So as long as you have that
yeah.
permission where you can turn it off and stay off.
"May I have permission to shut off my camera?"
Yeah, I know.
Just
Well,
ask.
hopefully you won't. Hopefully, again, if you have something in place,
Yeah,
the teacher
they
will be
shouldn't let
aware.
that.
If you, when you log in, if you're just, they'll be like, they won't say anything. Also being still able to use the bathroom during
Mhm.
class because it may involve leaving and rejoining the online classroom.
Yes.
And you don't really want the teacher drawing attention to that. Like,
Mm-mm.
where'd you go? Why did you get up
Yeah,
and leave? So if the teacher understands, like, you're just going to take off and come back, and they just keep on going, it doesn't embarrass anybody so that they understand what that is about. And so maybe like, yeah, like agreed upon a code word or notification that the student can use in a private chat to alert the teacher that they need to leave for a medical or bathroom need.
that could be
So
fun.
yeah,
Private.
so just like you might have a code word or a gesture like in class, like to the teacher know, like, I gotta go. So that's important to have set up too. And same thing, if you need to miss class due to medical needs, lessons, classwork, exams can be made available to the student to do in their own time. So even though you think, well, they're not in a classroom, still these things are going to
Mhm.
apply. So make sure you still have a 504 plan. And so I'm just going to close this out with a few things we already talked about last week. And that is some other recommendations are to maintain written documentation of all discussions, agreements, and actions. So
So you have
keep
proof for it.
right. So make sure you keep all of that. And because that'll help track progress also for future discussions on it as well. Be actively involved, advocate when necessary, and follow up with the schools. Have a support network of trusted people like healthcare professionals or advocates. So, which we do. And I think a lot of you with this do.
Should
And
have.
yeah, like your medical team.
Doctors, nurses, therapists,
Yep.
nurse call line,
Yeah, we
things
have
like that.
all
Important to
kinds of
have. They're important
things.
to have when you have this
Mhm.
disease.
And the other thing is customizations based on unique needs of a child is important because each child is different. This disease is different for
Pros is different for
everybody.
everyone.
Right. So having those customizations are important.
Custom roller coaster for every person.
It's a really, I know, huh? It's like a fun amusement park with each having your own roller coaster. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
just for
great.
yourself.
Yeah. And you also want to take into account maybe not just beyond school, but extracurricular activities, transitioning between grade levels or schools that can be problematic. And the other thing is standardized testing also. So make sure you have something in place, and that takes a little bit more time sometimes. So make sure you have something in place for the standardized testing. And open conversations with your child about their accommodations and rights are very important. So, as we talked about,
So
important
they
for you to
understand
know
what
so
they're
you
knowing,
understand
so
it.
they understand what they're doing and what
Mhm.
it's for, what the 504 plan is for. So they're
Yep.
not just like, I have a 504 plan. I don't know what it is. You can look
Right.
at it.
And it because it's important too, you know your rights and you know what
Mhm.
you are entitled to and what someone is not providing.
I'm
So
entitled to this 504 plan.
it's important to know.
Mhm.
And also acknowledging their thoughts, feelings, and concerns about privacy, which we kind of mentioned too.
Yes.
So
Don't
making sure.
embarrass a kid.
Right. That's the last thing you wanna do. It's already like you don't wanna make them not want this because it's gonna be a problem, but it's more like a 504 plan is a partner
Yeah. And
in
it's
your
here to
medical
help. Yeah.
journey. Yeah, so make sure that you just address all that and take their privacy into account. Something else I saw that was written that was interesting was having accommodations is not a commentary on your ability or potential. It's a necessary aspect of your IBD care. And so that was written on the
Mm.
Crohn's and Colitis Foundation site. But I think that's important because having a 504 plan doesn't mean that there's a lack of ability, a lack of potential. It's just part of having IBD.
Like, I mean, I could use this. Well, you need this. It's
Right.
something everyone should have who has IBD. No one
And
should be left out.
and maybe you won't need it, but like Misa said, you shouldn't be left out. If you do
Mhm.
need it, you should be entitled to the same education everybody
Yeah.
else is
Don't be scared to
receiving.
ask for it.
That
Here to help, not embarrass you.
yeah, well, that's very important. It
Yeah.
is not there to embarrass you. It's there to help. So yeah, just think of it as part of your IBD team. All the
Yes.
different aspects. It's just another part of it. So that wraps up
for
for today's
episode
episode.
of the
Yes, we're going to kind of
last episode.
conclude our 504 plans here. We may do more on them in the future.
Might come back in the future, but who knows?
Right. But we're hoping this gives you guys a good baseline, a good place to start. And with the links, we'll be providing different things for you to access in case you guys need that help.
Yes.
If you guys want to follow us on Instagram, you can at Team IB Determined. And there's the stories of our journey and a lot of take step stuff right now because we're still fundraising for that. And so you want to follow us on there. And then on Instagram at the Reggie Project is another interesting one. I think a lot of you might enjoy that. So check that out. If you guys want to download a copy of your own Reggie and take it with you to an appointment, we would love to see pictures.
You
So
want to see pictures of Reggie at like maybe a hospital, like you're taking pictures with Reggie while you're getting a shot or an IV, or you're a biologic.
Yep.
Or if you do take a biologic, or you can take a picture with Reggie at like the store maybe, or
Yeah.
Disneyland or something fun where you go.
Right.
Just to show how your life
Right.
is like with your disease, or if you just support Crohn's disease, or anything, just raise awareness with Reggie.
We would love to see that. And that's the Reggie Project on Instagram. And you can also listen to us on any podcast station, places like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube now. And really, but anywhere you find any podcasts, that's where we're at.
Buzzsprout, there's a link to all the different podcasts.
Yeah,
right
we'll
there.
have that. We'll provide that for you guys so you can find that.
And there are YouTube podcasts now. And if you do want to watch us and listen to us, you can go to YouTube. And if you are on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to be notified every time we post a new video, make sure to hit that blue bell icon. The bell icon.
Yes.
I think it'll be blue when you click it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And also like we enjoy the
Getting
comments.
Yeah, have we been getting some comments?
Yeah, it's been a little
Yeah,
quiet,
It's
but
been a little slow. So please break that no comment streak.
yeah. and let us know what is important to you guys and what we could talk about and expand upon, because I think it's very important that we are really helping you guys. We definitely want to be there for you guys. That's what we're doing this for.
You could say maybe what you related to in the episode, what brought you to this channel, if you just want to say hi, or if you do have an idea for something you want in a podcast you want to see in the future, like maybe there's something we didn't touch on today, or there's another podcast you have in mind of, just leave it in the comments and we'll read the comment. We read all of our comments and we'll make sure to maybe try to incorporate it in another podcast.
Yeah. So just let us know. We're happy to do it.
We love getting feedback.
Yeah. So with that, guys, that is the end of the episode. And we will be back next week with something different and something fun for all of you, hopefully.
No, we don't know what it is yet. We don't know what it is either.
I know.
So check in next week.
Yeah, it's going to be a surprise to everybody. So thank you guys for listening. Hope you guys all have a happy weekend, week, work day, school day, whatever happened in your day. Spring break's almost here.
Almost here. Might be here for you guys before it is for me. So happy spring break.
So if you are,
spring break, happy 504 plan.
Yeah, enjoy. So you guys all have a good rest of your day. And we'll see you next week with the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you will stick around, tune in, and reach out to us with your own journeys. We are excited to give you an inside view of what it takes to be a caregiver and what it's like to be a patient.
And most of all, we hope you'll maybe be able to play something you hear on here that might help you in your own life. Sometimes life changes, and it's all about how you handle the journey.